It is an Imperial-themed day today. We're talking the final season of The Bad Batch, the crossover event comic Vader Down, and the second book of the original Thrawn trilogy, Dark Force Rising. All this and more on today's R2-BD. Oh man, I only realized just now that I didn't come up with an intro for this one. Yeah,
true.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry.
Welcome to
R2-BD.
Welcome to R2-BD.
That's it. That's the intro. I didn't come up with an intro. That's the intro. Welcome back to R2-BD, friends. I'm Joey.
I'm Jacob.
We're brothers. We like Star Wars.
This is your first time here. Welcome, obviously.
Welcome. We're ready to talk some things. If it's not your first time joining us, welcome back. And this is our first regular episode of R2-BD since we started recording remotely.
Yes, it is.
So that's cool to have here. The loose-ish structure of this show is that we talk about a TV thing, a comic, a book, all things Star Wars. We're supposed to talk about news, but we have so much new and current Star Wars things, so many new and current Star Wars things coming up right now, all of which we're doing episodes on. I think we're going to forego the news this episode.
That's fair. Because there's just so much that picking one news item is almost redundant because it's likely just going to be next episode. Yeah,
exactly. Like we could talk about Tales of the Empire, which is actually already out at the time of recording this, but that'll be the next episode. And then right after that is The Acolyte, which I'm so excited for all of that. But they're releasing it all so damn close to each other. And I think
honestly, we're just better off waiting until like The Acolyte has come and gone to really talk about news.
Yeah. Also, I think apparently Skeleton Crew is still supposed to come out late this year.
Really? Skeleton Crew?
Yeah, I think that's coming out late this year. Either that or probably early next year. If I were to guess, it's going to be early next year.
It's probably early next year, but I'm still optimistic that Skeleton Crew can be good.
Because I think that one's supposed to be like a Mandalorian era stuff, right? Like I think that's when that takes place.
That's what I recall hearing when like it was first announced.
Mm-hmm. Also, it's Jude Law, and also I don't know, something about the premise just kind of excites me. It's a cool idea. I don't know, just make like. As far as I know, the premise is Jude Law and like a bunch of kids being like heroes together in the galaxy. Like I don't know, something just different about that premise for Star Wars. I don't know, like we don't like focus on like kids in that way for Star Wars, and I don't know, radicalize the children. You know, that sounds.
Isn't that what the whole Jedi Order is about? Just a different manner.
Is the Jedi Order radical? Come on, let's be real.
I guess that's fair.
Yeah.
Yes.
Anyway, so what are we talking about today? What's our TV thing we're talking about today, Jacob?
TV thing we're talking about today is the last season of The Bad Batch.
Last season of The Bad Batch, which we have not covered seasons 1 and 2 of. I'm sure we'll go back and do it eventually, but talk about it while it's new and fresh and on everybody's mind because it was a great last season. What's our comic then?
Comic we did I'm assuming sort of the end of the Star Wars run that we've started, the combo comics crossover event Vader Down,
yep, because we've been reading the Star Wars run by Jason Aaron up to this point and the Darth Vader run by Kieran Gillen up to this point. So this is the crossover event, and we're sort of like capping off sort of our first little like block of comic reading with that, which is cool. It's working out. And then I chose our book for this particular episode. We're reading Dark Force Rising by Timothy Zahn, which is the second of the Thrawn trilogy. We have covered, of course, the first one as well. I read the Thrawn trilogy like when I was in middle school, I think, but I haven't reread it since. And so actually continuing to go through this is really fun for me.
I've never read it, so every time it's my first time.
Yeah, so that's cool. Anyway, let's talk some Bad Batch.
Yeah.
All right. So we had a 15 episode season, which if I were to guess, I think it was probably plotted out as like a 16 episode season, but then they made the last episode an hour, so 15. Which is weird because I imagine they plotted it out as 16 episodes because that's what the other two seasons are. But also season 1 also had an hour long episode, and it was still 16 episodes, which just I don't know, whatever. Make up your minds, guys. Whatever.
Or don't, because it's over.
Yeah. So I don't know. I didn't take like specific notes on the season because I just kind of like writing down the gist as like as they came out. The gist of each episode, that is, of course. But I don't know. How do we want to structure this? Do we want to go through it episode by episode, just kind of talk the broad strokes? What's up?
I mean, I don't see why we can't do both necessarily. Just like what each episode is about, and then maybe the broad stroke of the season, like maybe how it continued from last season, and maybe where characters could potentially go going forward.
You know what? Actually, looking at my notes here, this might be a good jumping off point. I don't know why I forgot to write them down in like each of my like. I just wrote like a little like. So like to talk about the way my notes are structured here, like I wrote down the episode name and then like just kind of what happened in it very briefly. So all I have is like confined Omega on Tantus, paths unknown, clone cadets and Drengir ? So just kind of like getting those out there. I realized actually now looking at my notes again, I didn't talk about Batcher at all in here, but Batcher is a really fun new part of the crew.
How did you not talk about that?
I don't know. I maybe I just didn't feel it was worth writing down. I don't know why. But Batcher is a character. Yeah, character.
Character feels like the right descriptor.
Yeah. Omega befriends a hound on Tantus, and when her and Crosshair escape Tantus, there's just a blue animal thing with them, and
Omega gained like a killer dog. Let's just put it that way.
Exactly. And
however, it's no longer a killer dog.
Yeah. But isn't that also just the most Omega shit ever? Like,
yeah, it is. Omega's like animal like queen of the Bad Batch and just does everything destructive.
Exactly. Yeah. I guess we'll talk about confined while we're on it. The first episode here. So something that I've been kind of unsure of throughout the Bad Batch's run up to season 3 is just like how much time is passing. They've never been really clear about that. I'm kind of going off of like trying to think of what sort of like live TV logic of certain shows like that, like each season is kind of like a year, but I'm not sure if we're actually 3 years into the reign of the Empire by the end of the show. I don't think that's the case.
No, I'm not sure we are.
I'll say at the very least throughout the show, about a year has passed because someone did the math on the wall of Omega's tallies on Tantus, and it was like 100 some days. So combine that with the obvious amount of time passing throughout the first 2 seasons, I think at least a year passes. So probably like at least 18 BBY by the end of the show, not counting the flash forward at the end.
Right, obviously. It feels like a reasonable assumption, especially considering it's Tarkin that comes to Tantus, right, at the end?
Yeah.
And given his like comment about Operation Stardust, like reallocating the funds, and I'm like, okay, that's clearly referencing. I'm assuming that's clearly referencing like moving the Death Star more forward than it potentially would have been.
How
causing me to actually be able to say if the Bad Batch didn't storm Tantus, the Death Star would not have been complete nearly as quickly.
I would take it even a step further. Who would have thought that way back in Star Wars The Clone Wars Season 2, the iconic episodes The Zillo Beast and The Zillo Beast Strikes Back, who would have thought the Zillo Beast would be responsible for the Death Star? Am I right?
Listen, when we watched Kaiju monster movie Fun back on TV when it aired,
2010, I think it was.
Neither of us,
2010, yeah.
And neither of us were like, "Yeah, Death Star, baby!"
Right? Exactly.
We were like Godzilla, woo!
And that was exactly it, because we were big Godzilla kids. I think me especially. I was massive.
You were
Godzilla
more
kid.
than me, but I had my fun share too.
Yeah. But I don't know. We always loved that because I remember having the DVD box. I still have them somewhere. The DVD box sets of the Clone Wars, and there were like the featurettes on them where Filoni would talk about like the inspiration behind certain episodes, and he would talk about like the Godzilla inspiration behind the Zillo Beast, and to the point where like there's the one clone trooper pilot has like the Godzilla like green markings with the eyes on his helmet, and I want to say, I forget how, I think there's a Rodan reference somewhere in there too. Is one of the clones named Rodan or something?
I think that sounds right. It's been a little while since I've seen that particular episode. Those batches of episodes in the Clone Wars.
Wow, we jumped way ahead there, though. Let's talk about Paths Unknown and even weirder monster shit in Star Wars. That was totally the Drengir, right?
It has to be. The Drengir, for anyone who don't know, is the High Republic, like, sentient vine species.
They were sort of built up as, like, if I have put it together correctly, like, before they had fully revealed the Nameless in the High Republic. Like, the Drengir were sort of shown as, like, these are the bad guys of the High Republic, look at them.
They were definitely, like, mid-phase 1, the immediate threat.
Mm-hmm.
They have an interesting history, the Drengir. I'm not necessarily going to go into that, but that had to be them here. It's really the only kind of known Star Wars creature that fits.
And hey, for those unfamiliar with the High Republic and where the Drengir might come from, now's a great time to check it out. We got the Acolyte coming up soon. Get into some High Republic stuff. And if you're not into some High Republic stuff and you're looking for some things on that, when we cover the Acolyte, we're doing a whole sort of like High Republic special episode of R2-BD for that. So check us out then. Yeah, plugging mid episode. Also, the Clone Cadets were in this one, which I found interesting. Clone Cadets that got away. Some of them voiced by Daniel Logan, not all of them.
Isn't it like this one's a little longer ago, but isn't it like world's most dangerous hunter something style? Aren't they being hunted by what are they called? I can't think of what the species is called now. The lizard-like ones.
Oh, the Trandoshans. Are you thinking of that Ahsoka two-parter? Padawan Lost.
Yeah, that's right. Yep. Yeah, like I said,
Padawan Lost and Wookiee Hunt. Yeah.
These episodes are a little longer ago, like I said.
I didn't take it is kind of like that. Yeah.
I mean, the cadets are still massively interesting to see, obviously.
Let's also talk about though the next episode, Shadows of Tantus. Which is our first and definitely the biggest look at how Filoni is. I shouldn't say Filoni because he's not he doesn't have as big a hand in the Bad Batch as he does as he did the Clone Wars. This is Jennifer Corbett and Brad Rao really doing a lot of this work, which is awesome. Really working to, I would argue, in the same way that Filoni fixed a lot of the prequels through the Clone Wars and like gave that more meaning. We're kind of doing the same thing with the sequel trilogy here, with Palpatine and something called Project Necromancer. This is fascinating to me, I think, because also, first off, it's legitimately making Rise of Skywalker better, in my opinion. Like, everyone complains that one of the worst things about that movie is that Palpatine just kind of comes back. They never explain how. One of the most memed lines in the movie is somehow Palpatine returned.
Yeah, which, I mean, in fairness, is a funny line.
It's a funny line, but like actually giving a reason for that and explaining why it was kept, like how it was kept so under wraps, like no one would know. And we have something as far back as the early days of the Empire. Palpatine is already, as he says, like I want to say the line is something like, nothing matters more to me than is securing like the future of this empire. He's already doing that. He's already working on that. And so
Palpatine already. Almost like Palpatine came to a similar conclusion that Thrawn did.
That the Empire is just not sustainable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he might as well be sustainable.
Yeah. Yeah. It's true. Like it's I love that. And again, just like for me, it's like, I don't know. I'm one of those weird people. I personally defend the Palpatine return in Rise of Skywalker.
Listen, I have nothing against it. I will defend it because honestly, it's good, it's fun, and it does make sense, especially as more content will make it make sense.
For me, it was always just the reason I always kind of liked it from the second it was announced. I just always thought, like, I don't know, Palpatine, for me at least, should be like the big bad of Star Wars. This is the guy that had plan upon plan upon plan, and then he didn't account for his already unstable apprentice turning on him and tossing him down an elevator shaft.
I think amusingly, the Vader comics that we've been reading kind of account for that.
Right? Isn't that interesting though too? Because they hadn't even thought of bringing back Palpatine yet for the sequel trilogy, and that was 2015 when Kieran Gillen was writing that. And like Palpatine's already saying, like, "Hey Vader, if like you kind of suck at this, I'm going to look into other people to work for me." And also that kind of like explains the existence of the Inquisitors as well. Is that like just Palpatine had these guys in his back pocket? He was ready. So yeah, I don't know. I like the idea of building up Project Necromancer as it is.
Of course, the show, again, not jumping too far ahead, does have to kind of cut it short. We do need to cover, like, what did you say when we talked about, like, 50 years?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, because from until Palpatine's actual return in Rise of Skywalker, that is roughly, I want to say 35 ABY, I think. We're 35 to 40, somewhere around there. Yeah, we're talking about 50 years after Project Necromancer has started. So like it needs to stop. It needs to get like have the brakes put on it pretty much. But even then, we're now talking about Project Necromancer again in The Mandalorian, which is really cool to see.
Which makes more sense as a proper starting point for everything that happens.
Mm-hmm. But to know that the groundwork was already laid there, that those ideas were already being put into motion, I think that works. Let's see. A different approach was up next. Then this was after Omega and Crosshair escape. This is them finding the Bad Batch once again. I remember just like specifically the last scene and shot of this episode just sticking with me for that whole week until the next episode aired.
Yeah.
It's really effective. It really is. What I always like, what I loved about it was that like first off, I was already seeing by this episode just. And as much as I love the Hunter Omega dynamic, I think even more so, like Crosshair, I think is even an even closer father figure to Omega by the end of the season.
But I think that is fair. I think Hunter has had that position so long. It's not like he's become comfortable. It's that Crosshair steps into that very needed role of someone who would do pretty much everything, and because of that, he doesn't want Omega to do nearly as much as she's going to do.
Yeah. I love it. I actually I had rewatched at some point during season 3. I had rewatched the very first episode of The Bad Batch, and even there's that great little moment where even early on, Omega is having like little conversations with Crosshair because like she can kind of see that something's going on with him, and like she's always kind of been like his anchor, like always been the one to kind of like pull him back. And I really like that. I really like that. Yeah, just it's really great. I love their dynamic, and I love especially we'll talk about it by the end of the season. But I love where that sort of arc culminates for them. It's great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is great.
Also, a different approach just had a bunch of Liam O'Brien and Sam Riegel appearances, and that was just really funny to me. Anyway, we had the return then, which my only note here for the episode is a Hunter Crosshair bitch fight. But importantly, this was where the Outpost took place last season, yes. And just getting some like Imperial intel from there. But yeah, I think the episode is just establishing where Crosshair sits in being trusted by the rest of the group, and that namely he's not being trusted by the rest of the group.
Right.
Especially
I
Hunter.
Also do think it's Crosshair has done a lot of growing, a lot of changing. This episode, I think, is a big demonstration of how far he's come by the fact of how concerned he is about the clone helmet collection.
Yeah.
It's not given like a big spotlight in the episode. It just shows him fixing it, and everything is moving on. Yeah.
Really good stuff. Also, we haven't talked about the tremor in his hand.
Yeah, we haven't mentioned that. We should at this point.
Which, like, I love the way it's played because there's a lot of focus on it early on. There's not as much focus in like the middle of the season, and kind of jumping ahead here. But what I really loved was sort of like the last third of the season when they were talking about going back to Tantus. The tremor starts up again. I love the way that sort of the tremor was tied to Crosshair's trauma in his time on Tantus, and how much that really messed with him.
It affected him so badly that what makes him part of the Bad Batch isn't as effective.
Yeah, it's it's so good. It's truly just one of my favorite little character arcs in this season. Really, really good stuff. Then we had a bit of a two-parter, Infiltration and Extraction. This was catching back up with the Rex group, him and his sort of born-again clones, which I was really happy to see. Also, we got to see Hauser again, back from the Ryloth two-parter back in season 1.
Yeah, right.
Who's a character I remember just really loving when that two-parter first aired. So seeing him again was awesome. But mostly, also actually got to see Teth again, which was, I don't know, just a cool planet that I was just really happy to see again. But really, I think
time and stuff, it's cool.
Yeah. But what I really, really loved about this was we got to see bits of Commander Wolf getting involved with Rex, in that Wolf is still working with the Empire at this time, but he's not fully with the Empire. In that, like, he sees what Rex and the Batch are doing, and how that has changed their lives for the better. And he legitimately starts to doubt his ties to the Empire. I was wondering also if we were gonna start to explore Wolf defecting from the Empire by the end of the season, because we know that he joins up with Rex and Gregor eventually in Rebels. But I'm kind of glad we didn't see that. I don't know if they'll explore it in other places in the future, but I kind of like that it was left where it was.
I like where that's left where it is. It's got potential, like, spin-off energy, as long as it's sort of like a limited spin-off energy.
Because they've said that, like, the Bad Batch isn't the end of, like, the Clone Wars universe era of things. But I'm not sure how interested I am in at least in, like, just another clone show, especially after the Bad Batch. I mean, I definitely want something like with maybe clones in it, but like, I personally, after watching this season, am a little more interested in like Ventress or maybe the Jedi kids by the end of the season. That could be interesting to explore. But I mean, hey, I guess we'll find out. I guess whatever they have planned for it.
It's a to-be-seen situation.
Yeah. Also, in this two-parter, we got introduced to our CX unit for this, which, oh my god, the fan theories. This was CX2, I think. And yeah, everyone kind of immediately thought, even from the trailers when they first showed him, that it was going to be Tech. I'm really glad it wasn't. I love that Tech's legacy kind of exists the way it does from the end of season 2.
Listen,
Tech also
went out in a. I don't want to cut your thought off too broadly. I just want to say that Tech went out as a proper member of the Bad Batch would. Operation 99.
Plan 99, yeah.
99, but yeah.
Which is also interesting, though, because everyone was like, oh god, it's got to be Tech, right? But then by the time that the end of the season came, and we saw the rest of the CX unit, Bad Batch, he was actually the crosshair of the group, which I think actually makes his continual pursuing of the Bad Batch even more interesting. The fact that he's sort of the crosshair parallel in those CX units.
It's most definitely meant to parallel the fact that Crosshair was the one pushing to catch the Bad Batch, because he knew they would come and like wreck the Empire's shit up.
Yeah, just great stuff. And he just kept fucking living. But that's beside the point. Then we had Bad Territory, where
he survived.
Yeah. But then we had Bad Territory, which was Fennec Shand. We got to see Fennec again. Also, and I think everybody kind of called it, because here's one thing I do lament about the release of this season, is that they put Ventress in the fucking trailers. I really don't think they should have done that. Because like the second Fennec started contacting someone, everyone was like, okay, it's gonna be Ventress, right? Because Ventress is a bounty hunter, and we're interested in M counts. Of course, Ventress is interested in M counts, so come on. But also
rocket scientists to figure out what's going to go on.
Yeah, exactly. But also in this, we had speaking of M counts, we learned about like M count bounties that the Empire is putting out on certain people. Because yeah, I mean, anyone with something of a Star Wars fan brain could put together M counts, midichlorian counts. We're talking about Force sensitive children, and once again, that line that I always think of from Clone Wars, from Children of the Force. I foresee an army of Force sensitive spies at my side. It's That's totally it. It's great. That
I
Inquisitors,
don't
of course. But
I don't remember which episode it's in. There's an episode. It might be that one. It might be the next one. Where Dr. Hemlock is like talking to. I don't remember who he's talking to, but he makes a comment about there are no Force like adults with MK counts.
M counts.
And I remember reading online. It was to someone observing that is the Empire's ultimate bureaucratic effect at play. The left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing.
Yeah.
Palpatine is purposefully not giving over potential Inquisitors for this task because I think he wants to see if Hemlock could even do it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I love that. Oh, it's so good. Fuck, so good. Speaking of, we actually haven't talked about Hemlock much up to this point. How did you feel about Hemlock as it pretty much sort of like the end all villain for the show?
I think he's sort of the ultimate personal threat the Bad Batch can take down and feel like they've done something impactful without disrupting the Star Wars timeline.
That's true.
Because they can't take on Tarkin and do anything really there because he has to survive to be killed.
I mean, unless they did what a lot of us were suspecting they would do by the end of the show, which is, just kill off the whole batch. Which I'm so glad they didn't. I'm just so glad they didn't. But yeah, you can't make it like important characters like Tarkin, because the batch kind of has to die. But Hemlock, I don't know. I at least found sometimes Hemlock to be something of an underwhelming villain, or at least someone with like a lot of potential to be expanded on in the future.
But I'm with you. I think if Hemlock was given more time to breathe, either on screen, off screen, if he was given maybe a comic run that would explore maybe his character, a book maybe showing his rise. I would be interested in maybe a book to show his rise to the position he's in.
Mm-hmm. I mean, hell, there's literally that Tarkin book that I really like. Do something like that for Hemlock. That could be really interesting.
Yeah, that would be very interesting.
Yeah.
As it stands, sometimes a little underwhelming. He's the perfect microcosm of what the Empire is and stands for as it directly relates to the Bad Batch's goals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let's see, then we had the Harbinger. Okay, so I have not read Dark Disciple. Neither have you.
Neither have I.
But I think, especially with the announcement of Ventress's return, although I think I definitely knew ahead of time, that like Dark Disciple, as far as I knew, was like the end of Ventress's character. This is sort of like the canon end for her. It took place during the Clone Wars. Whatever happened there was supposedly the end. Turns out that is not the case. Yeah. Turns out that is not the case. This did cause me to get a little bit more spoiled about Dark Disciple than I was hoping to, but whatever. As far as I know, Ventress was buried on Dathomir. Which, look, you bury Ventress on Dathomir. The way I see it, I don't think Dathomir is a very good place to stay dead.
No, Dathomir is kind of like the ultimate zombie uprising planet.
Right? Like, I don't know. If you tell me that somebody on Dathomir just somehow came back to life after being buried there, I don't think, and this is just me, I don't think that's an incredible stretch of the imagination.
No, nothing about that sounds shocking in the slightest. Honestly, literally anywhere else is better to bury somebody.
Yeah. Although they have said, I think Jennifer Corbett said that we will find out eventually how Ventress returned. Just the Bad Batch, and I agree with this. The Bad Batch just isn't the right place to tell that story, and like what relevance would that actually have to telling the story of the Bad Batch? It just wouldn't. It just wouldn't.
It would be kind of like in the sequel trilogy, I am Darth Plagueis being said out loud.
That is the thing I always joked with you about. Like when Last Jedi came out and everyone was bitching that Rey wasn't somebody important, I was like, it was like around that same conversation, but like people were like, oh my god, Snoke wasn't Darth Plagueis, and I was like, what what would that actually mean in that moment? Like, what, he's like ranting and raving to Kylo and Rey, and he's like, and don't you know that I am Darth Plagueis? And Rey's like, what, who? Like,
Nothing
no one
means
would fucking
literally
know.
nothing
No
to
one would
Rey
fucking care.
to them.
Yeah. So exactly, yeah. Like it's not the place to tell that story here, and that makes sense. Although I did love the little line, I still have a few lives left in me. Makes sense. And also, very honestly, as much as I love Ventress and I love Nika Futterman with every fiber of my being, Ventress is one of my favorite Star Wars characters ever. I love the character so much. But my favorite thing about this episode is everything with Omega. I loved I personally was getting really excited about the prospect of Omega Jedi, but I mean, if it's not meant to be, it's not meant to be. Whatever.
Maybe if the show had more time, it could have been an explored possibility.
Mm-hmm. I mean, she definitely has the potential to be a Jedi, I think. Just like pretty much anyone does. We could have taken the sort of Sabine route with her. But yeah, obviously, it's episode 9 of 15 of the final season. Like, it's not going to happen, definitely. But it's something I'd be curious to see expanded on eventually. But yeah,
we'll see.
Also, how great was that? That was the other point I was going to make earlier. Was that Ventress coming back isn't important. Like, as far as the batch is concerned, from their perspective, it's just a separatist spy that survived the Clone War. Let's fucking deal with this. And so we get that great scene where Ventress squares off with the batch. That's where we revealed her yellow lightsaber from Dark Disciple. And I don't know. That was another one of my absolute favorite scenes. Like, while Omega's off doing this sort of Jedi training test, the batch is like, okay, yep, no. While she's gone, let's just kill the bitch. Let's take care of this now. Also, had one of my favorite.
I love the idea that they were just gonna kill Ventress and just tell Omega, like, yeah, she left or something.
Right. And I do love that scene also has like one of my absolute favorite uses of the Bad Batch theme, the one that always plays in the credits. I don't know if you remember it in that scene, but it's such a great use of it.
I can remember it being there, yeah.
But yeah, what an episode!
Absolutely.
Yeah. Then we had another 2-part release. Although I don't think it was really another 2-parter. They just kind of released both of them in the same week. Identity Crisis and Point of No Return. So, Identity Crisis is where we sort of tackle Emery getting involved with Project Necromancer. And we learn more about what the Empire is doing with these M-count bounties, taking Force-sensitive children, locking them away on Tantus, studying them. Also, had a great Cad Bane appearance here.
I was so happy to see Cad Bane, even for as short a time as it was.
It was a great appearance. Here's the thing. So Cad Bane, like, up until the Bad Batch happened, was like space cowboy in like design only. Dave Filoni made a cowboy in space, but like didn't really play into the fact that Cad Bane was a cowboy until the Bad Batch, I think, like where he got that literally like the Western like standoff, the duel between him and Hunter, and then we did the same thing in Book of Boba Fett between him and Boba. Like, it's cool, and I love that we've really leaned into it now. But like now, every time Cad Bane enters a scene, we have to like give him like the little like fucking Wild West theme behind him. It's great, and I won't complain about it really. But,
in fairness, I will say this: in fairness, the Clone Wars is not the place to do duels when all of his opponents are Jedi generals.
That's true. But yeah, I don't know. I kind of like that.
More as a space pirate in Clone Wars. Now he's a space cowboy.
Yeah. But yeah, also just Identity Crisis also just hit really hard. I don't think did the Batch even show up in Identity Crisis? I don't think they did.
Oh, I think it's just all like an Emery and like we're grappling with the moral question of we're stealing children. What the hell?
Yeah. Really good stuff. Love that. But then we had Point of No Return, which is another soul-crushing one. Maybe that's why they paired them in the same week. They're just like, let's just crush their souls twice in a row. Because yeah, this is where pretty much like it's the start of the last third of the season. You can tell they're ramping up to the end. It's really, really good. Omega is captured in this one. And I'll say my favorite thing about this episode right off the bat is there's that great shot at the end of season 2 when Omega is captured and Hunter is looking after her, and they literally parallel that shot when Omega is captured and Crosshair is looking up at the ship flying away at the end. Mm-hmm. And also, in that same scene, it's that great bit where Crosshair tries to throw the tracker onto the ship and he just misses. Like, oh god, the guilt that man must be feeling.
A complete fail on hitting the target.
Yeah. You know what, actually now that we're talking about Omega's capture at the end of season 2, I'm surprised we never saw Sid this season.
I'm a little glad because I didn't mind Sid. I'm okay with that we've moved on from that part of their lives. Like,
I mean, yeah, but I kind of wanted to see Sid deal with the consequences of her actions because, you know, I don't know. Maybe I just wanted a revenge scene, and maybe that's unhealthy of me to say.
I also didn't feel like something the Batch would do.
Maybe Crosshair. But also he wasn't that close to Omega at that time. He didn't even really know Sid. Yeah, that doesn't make sense then. Yeah.
The character that would be most invested in revenge doesn't have the motivation for it.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe I just want to see Sid die. I don't know.
I think the most that would have happened is we would have seen like Wrecker punch Sid or something.
Yeah. I don't know. I want bad things to happen to Sid now. I'm still mad over the end of season 2.
Well, I mean, Sid's a terrible character who has their reckoning coming.
Mm-hmm. Who the Batch was warned about multiple times before she betrayed them.
The reckoning will come in Star Wars canon. It's not going to come at the Batch's hands. Clearly.
Yeah. Chewie rip her arms off. Anyway, we then had Juggernaut, which, look, I love a clone turbo tank. I had a Lego set of that thing and everything. I love a clone turbo tank. They made a whole action set piece designed around a clone turbo tank. Or I guess it's an Imperial turbo tank now. But yeah, I don't know. I love those things. They're cool as hell. And also, you know who I wasn't expecting to love by the end of this show? Fucking Admiral Rampart.
Dude. Right? Like, that blew my mind that happened.
And then they made me love him in, like, 3 episodes. And then he fucking betrayed them anyway. And I was like, fuck, no, you rat bastard. Fuck.
I feel like that was the point of his last comment to Crosshair.
I forget what it was.
He says to Crosshair something. I don't remember exactly what he said. And Crosshair goes, I've changed. And Rampart goes, have you now?
That's interesting. Because Rampart doesn't believe in his own change, does he? That's really good.
And like, I remember that last betrayal game. I was like, oh, okay, so Rampart hasn't changed. Like, nothing. He's still the same arrogant asshole that he was.
Mm-hmm. You know what's funny is they said that they were gonna get Rampart, and then they showed him on that like junkyard things doing like what Bill Burr did in The Mandalorian. And I still didn't recognize him because he just looks way different when they find him again.
I mean, I figured it was him based off the context clues.
I mean, it's still who plays him? Is it Noshir Dalal? I think. Still a great voice for the character. Love him. But I don't know, just the design was so radically different. It took a few seconds for you to be like, oh shit, that's him. All right then.
I agree. Radical change in appearance, but you know, it's a jail life. You're not going to look like an Imperial officer.
Yeah. But then we head into the breach, which I thought was like sort of like definitely the last bit of like fun the show is allowed to have because it's a fun little infiltration episode. It's Rampart and the Batch going in, and I loved all the scenes where Rampart was just like sort of like fucking with like Imperials, like still like taking on his role as, you know, an admiral and like commanding them and everything. It was really fun to watch, and nobody questioned him because he was just good at his job. Really, really cool.
There's being good at your job, and then there's Rampart being good at your job.
Yeah, I think Into the Breach, I forget exactly what it was about it. Maybe it was just the amount of fun I was having watching him, you know, pretend to be an Imperial again. But I don't know. I think this is the one that really just sold me on the character again. Like I thought he was so interesting in this one, and had a really fun dynamic with the Batch. Definitely wasn't wasn't like on the same redemption arc that like Emery was.
No.
But
I will say though that I think this episode is very good at noting the actual tension of can they get there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, logically, the show will have to get them there.
Mm-hmm.
But as more and more facts come up against their plan, like, oh, well, just, strip the codes. Oh, we can't. They're literally transmitted to the ship directly. How do we get there? Oh, we have to magnetize to the bottom. And they're like, well, how do we do that? And then, like, the plan just keeps getting slightly more desperate with each passing moment.
Yeah. I think this is also, like, when despite being probably the last bit of, like, fun the show is able to have, really, I think it's also, like, when the end of the show really set in for me, because it has that great scene where the Batch just paints over their armor, and, like, you see their identity literally get stripped away from their armor. And that's like really what you can confirm, like just watching it. That's just like it's the end, not just for the show, but like I think for just them as a crew, you know. Which I'm going to talk about a point from the last episode now because it's the point of I think this whole season really. When Crosshair brings up the point on Tantus when he says that like the Bad Batch died when Tech died. It's just like we are not that same crew anymore. Like we are just not the same guys we were. We are not out there adventuring the same way we were. We are not Clone Force 99 still. It's over. We are over. And that really set in for me, just watching that armor get painted over and hearing Crosshair say that in the last episode. It's just, it's crushing. And but it's true. Like, it's just, yeah, they don't, season 3 has just such a radically different tone from the rest of the show. That I really appreciated seeing. Yeah. Anyway,
moving on to more depressing shit.
Yeah, well, Flash Strike did get me excited for the final episode because, I mean, look, come on, it might have exclusively been the Zillow Beast. It probably was exclusively the Zillow Beast.
Listen. As soon as we talked about it, like we were both like, okay, she needs to be like riding the Zillow Beast on like its neck or its head or something. That is the ultimate vibe Omega was giving off.
I did see somebody on Twitter after the episode here is just like Tech and Emery, or not, it was like Echo and Emery like walking into Project Necromancer and like seeing like like Omega riding on a Zillow Beast and like the kids causing havoc in the back, and it was the gif of Donald Glover bringing the pizzas into the apartment. Everything's on fire. It's great. Yeah, it's just totally the vibe because that's exactly what happens in the last episode. Then, it's great. Although Flash Strike is where we get the great scene of Crosshair like confronting his trauma about going back to Tantus. It's really really good. Crosshair. I really didn't expect. That's another thing I just did not expect to love from this season is that Crosshair is probably my favorite Batch member now. If we're not counting Omega, if we're just talking like the main like Clone Force 99, I think Crosshair's my favorite.
I think he became my favorite too because he had to overcome so much.
Yeah. And like probably, and we're talking about Star Wars here, probably has one of the best redemption arcs in Star Wars. A franchise already filled to the brim with so many redemption arcs. I think Crosshair is one of the best.
It's absolutely top 5 redemption arcs. I don't know if it's number 1. I would need to give that some thought, but it's top 5.
I mean, Vader's right there, of course. And there's Agent Callus. I love Agent Callus.
So good.
Ventress. So many good ones.
Exactly. That's why I would need to give that some actual thought as to where in that top 5, but it's definitely a top 5 redemption arc.
Anyway, the final episode is called The Cavalry Has Arrived, and that fucking broke my heart. Because it's the first ever line we hear any member of the Bad Batch say in the Clone Wars is they come here and they arrive and Wrecker says the cavalry has arrived and I don't know. It certainly wasn't helping that the episode kept making me worried for Wrecker because he was sustaining many an injury towards the end there.
It hasn't helped that the show has had this kind of loose relationship with Wrecker dying.
Yeah. Well, I remember back in season 1, like I think kind of everyone thought that Wrecker was a goner in season 1 because he was the most level 1 of the group, I think. And then of course they did the whole arc of of him like with his inhibitor chip, and them having to like remove that. So like yeah, like Wrecker always kind of seemed like the one that if they were to kill off anyone, it was going to be Wrecker. I'm so glad they didn't. But fuck, they had me worried.
Everyone's favorite drunk uncle survived.
Exactly, and really, what more could you want? But yeah, Cavalry Has Arrived is a fantastic last episode. I don't think anyone's surprised by that. Of course, they were gonna crush it. But I love the way Rampart goes out. First off, I don't know why that's the first thing I want to talk about. I want to talk about Rampart going out. I think
Rampart is probably the most succinct and obvious starting point beyond Wrecker surviving.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's great. The man's a little bitch, a little traitor, if you will. And we love him for it. And I love that also like his sort of final act is motivated by, despite everything he's done for the Batch, he still wants to get back into the Empire's good graces.
If not by if by nothing else, through extortion.
Mm-hmm. And then there's fucking the legend Nala Se coming in with a thermal detonator behind her back. And after learning everything about Project Necromancer, Rampart probably dies one of the only ones knowing Palpatine's full plan. Like, oh, yeah, it's so good. It's and of course good.
He has to die because 50 years need to pass.
Yeah.
It's gonna be like a whole lot of people in the Acolyte.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Oh, I can't wait for the Acolyte. It's gonna be so good. Anyway, shit. Such a great time for Star Wars. Holy fuck. I can't get over it. So good. Anyway, I did love actually, okay, so let's talk about fake Bad Batch, the CX unit Bad Batch. Everyone sort of has a parallel. I saw like a screenshot of someone like breaking down all of the what each member represents from the Batch. I thought that was really cool. I thought Echo finally. Echo is kind of like taking a backseat for a lot of the show, or at least a lot of the last season. Seeing him really shine in this final episode was really nice, especially being the guy that started. Well, I would say who started the whole Bad Batch story way back with Domino Squad. And also, of course, the whole first Bad Batch arc of Clone Wars being about saving Echo is really good. And also, God, this breaks my heart, Echo is still the only surviving Domino Squad member.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that any of them survived in the first place is a miracle, first off. So, yeah, take what you can get, I guess. That. Yeah. But anyway.
I love... I was going to say something specific. No, I can't think of it. It's fine.
Sorry.
I was going to say, Echo, putting off of the end of the last episode, Echo and Emery are to get, like, they're paired up to make this situation work.
Mm-hmm. And they're going with Rex's group then, which is awesome. I like that. Really, really cool stuff there. I did love
payoff to the Dillo Beast.
Yeah. I did love I love seeing the final confrontation between Crosshair, Hunter, and Hemlock, and Omega, of course, is there. Because in the fight with the fake Bad Batch, Crosshair got his fucking tremor hand chopped off. Goddamn. What is it with hands in Star Wars? Right hands, no less.
Right. It doesn't, I mean, statistically, most people are right-handed, so.
Yeah. But doing that, I forget who it was in the very first Bad Batch arc in Clone Wars. But Crosshair does that thing where he puts the gun on the shoulder to like help him aim. And he does that with Hunter at the end here too, and it works. And it's great. And then we just riddle Hemlock with lasers the second he gets that first shot in. It's so good
because he's handcuffed to Omega. Because with the threat that if I fall, you fall, which is great, by the way.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's the thing is like Project Necromancer is kind of being abandoned at that point. He knows it
already destroyed. Like, didn't the explosion already happen?
Pretty much. And so Hemlock was like, he knows that like Omega's important, but also like he values his own life more than Omega's. And so like he'll just be like, if I go, you go. It's a last moment of desperation for him. And then once it's all over, first off, I love that it was just gorgeous the way that like landing platform on Tantus looked within the rain and everything. And so then when like Omega and Crosshair and Hunter are reunited, I love the thing that really broke my heart there was just that the first one Omega goes to is Crosshair and they hug first, and I just thought that was so good. Love it.
That's those little details that build up and you do it right. It has the best kind of payoff.
Yeah. And then Hunter joins in too then, but like really like just laying it all out. Like it's about her relationship with Crosshair. Although of course not to shun her relationship with Hunter, because we do get something at the end there.
That gets sort of the last spotlight as the longest actual parental style relationship.
Yeah. But when everything is said and done, we talked about what Echo and Emery are going off to do. But one of my favorite things about this whole show, and really what I would argue the whole show is about from the very beginning, a question throughout the entirety of the Clone Wars is, what happens to the clones when the war is over? And there's a reason like the best episodes from like season 2, aside from the Crosshair ones, which are gorgeous, but season 2 had that amazing 2-parter where that was about like where we first got introduced to the CX units and showing like what the Empire is doing with the clones, how they're disregarding them. And so when Omega sits down there with Hunter and asks him what they're going to do, Hunter says, whatever we want. And there's something so fucking powerful about that to me. I'm legitimately getting choked up talking about it. Holy fuck. Wow. I didn't expect that. Fuck.
Wow. I will say, if the show ended on that peaceful shot of everyone sitting down under the big tree and stuff, that conversation, it would have been just as good as an ending.
Mm-hmm. I was actually, because they do kind of fake it out there. They do a full fade to black and everything. And I think that would have been a good ending to close out and hit us with the theme one last time. The bum 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 bum. One last time, hit us with it. But what really earned not closing out with those credits and that theme was the epilogue scene. Because it ends in sort of this Rebels-like way. And first off, can I just say, of the 3 big like animated Star Wars shows, Clone Wars, Rebels, and now Bad Batch, Clone Wars has a fucking stone cold ending. Evil, fucked up, kill your family ending.
It does. It absolutely does.
Rebels, sweet ending, laced with tragedy. Ezra's missing. This family is kind of broken forever, but they still kind of have each other.
Plotlines to be continued.
Yeah, but also like still giving us that little epilogue of like, hey, this is what we did for the rest of our lives throughout the original trilogy and all that. And then there's Bad Batch, and on this really really sweet note, has this really nice ending. Nothing really goes wrong, which I'm so happy about, especially considering it's a direct sequel to Clone Wars. I think is so deserved, considering again how fucking stone cold the ending of Clone Wars is. Giving us this really nice ending for these characters is nice, but also on the point of Rebels, having that sort of epilogue, I think this is just as important to that, showing that like, and again continuing that idea from what Crosshair said about the Bad Batch is over. We're not Clone Force 99 anymore. That's not us. Omega is something else. The Batch can settle down, live out their years on Pabu, grow old together. And again, because they're, double aging pretty much, there's Omega, late teens, early 20s, going off to join the rebellion. I don't know exactly how long they flash forward. I'm assuming it's the time of Rebels, because I think that would also make sense given Omega's past adventure with Hera. I think she's joining Hera's fleet probably.
That would make the most sense.
But she's going off to do that. But there's Omega, like who still has that fight in her. And Crosshair is there, or not Crosshair, Hunter's there.
Hunter. Yeah, that's what I was alluding to by Hunter getting sort of the last spotlight relationship moment.
Yeah. Hunter's there looking all old ass Joel Miller over there. He's with his dog. And
I did get before we touched on the really sweetheart moment of it. It's like Dad doesn't want dog. Dad and the dog.
Exactly. And yeah, and after they have that nice little moment together, it's just the final line of the series is she'll be fine. Fuck, I'm just talking about this. I don't need to fucking get choked up talking about it. Fuck. Oh my god, we need to move on. Whew. Wow. Goddamn, what a show. Jesus.
This is a show that I don't think could be easily replicated in its how it handles a nice ending for characters that have nothing, that had nothing but tragedy.
Yeah.
The show, this season in particular, earlier on with the Rex, with like Rex and stuff in it, did make me briefly consider how Rex felt about working with clones who did and who do and did in fact think the Jedi were still responsible for like terrible things.
I imagine he got all those inhibitor chips out eventually.
Maybe, and probably. But I just think it's interesting that Rex initially has to work with him on the basis that he has to just sort of cognitively just put that thought back to get the relationship started.
Mm-hmm.
Now, because there's, as you pointed out when we watched season 2, there's a difference between clones defecting and clones who think the Jedi are good people.
Mm-hmm. Oh, totally. Yeah, because it's like all Order 66 really says is that the Jedi have betrayed the Republic. They gotta go.
Which I will point out is probably an actually justified statement because they did try taking the Chancellorship by force.
Mm-hmm. And so, but once that is said and done, it's just kind of assumed they'll keep serving the Republic, now the Empire, and that's where the idea of stormtroopers comes from. Is that, like, you know, you could create the perfect soldier, sure, but they're only going to get you far as a single-minded perfect soldier will take you. And I say single-minded, but they're individuals. But single-minded in, like, you know, they have a purpose. And once they've served that purpose, as we very much see, the Empire has no other need for them. And I don't know. I love that.
Now, well, the clones can have their own purpose.
Yeah. All right. Whew, man, that took a lot out of me. Let's talk about a fun comic.
Yeah, fun comic time that definitely isn't filled with death at every corner.
Hey, it's really fun death. Let's be real. Come on. Like, it's really, really fun to watch Vader massacre these guys. Because let's get into Vader Down. This is by Jason Aaron and Kieran Gillen. Plotted out by them, but they do write their respective issues. So that's cool. So, I did not realize how literal this title would be. I thought Vader Down was just sort of like, I don't know. I don't even know what I really thought it was. I think it was just, I think I thought it was just kind of like a way of referring to what the rebels will do with him or something like that. I don't know. I really wasn't sure what I thought.
I didn't think it would be Vader literally being down.
Yeah, like he goes to Vrogas Voss, where he learned that Luke was, and in going after him, there's a fleet of rebels outside of Vrogas Voss. Vader, first off,
test run, right? Is that what it was?
What's up?
There was like a fleet of X-wings. They were doing some kind of test run, right?
I think so, yeah. And so Vader comes across these rebels. First off, massacres these guys. And then Luke Skywalker, the mad bastard that he is, at least Luke Skywalker as written by Jason Aaron, rams into Vader's ship with his own. Vader goes down. And that is the premise. It's a really simple premise, a really cool premise, but I really love it. I gotta say, also, I didn't realize how relevant this would be, but somebody on Twitter I saw recently was like posting about like some of the weird things that people assumed about Luke Skywalker between the release of A New Hope and The Empire Strikes Back, and like they showed like a Mark Hamill Muppets appearance where he like comes in and is like, "Justice for Alderaan," and he like screams like, "Down with the Empire," whatever. Like just a really radicalized Luke Skywalker who's like full on rebellion. And I don't know, I think that's this Luke Skywalker. I don't know. It was really, really funny.
I mean, I'm totally down. I've been down for this version of Luke Skywalker, like super radicalized dude who wants nothing more than to kill Darth Vader,
yeah.
killing
so,
his father.
Yeah. And so Vader has crashed on Vrogus Voss, and for the time being, right now, it is just Luke and him down there. And so,
and Afra's. I remember immediately loving the idea that Vader, was like, Afra, did you try to kill me just now?
Yeah. And so that creates a fun little dynamic between them pretty early on. But also, we then get the rest of the rebels involved. So the premise is actually Darth Vader versus the entire rebellion.
Single-handedly.
I think we all saw Rogue One. I think we all know how that ends.
So the rebels didn't see Rogue One, apparently.
Yeah, it hasn't happened yet for them. But and the only backup Vader has is fucking space lesbian Indiana Jones with her killer robots. And so yeah, that is all it is. It's a simple premise. But once we're actually down there, it gets really, really fun. First off, we do learn there is actually a Jedi temple on Vrogus Voss that Luke was looking into. And then Luke kind of realizes that he's like, it's like, I have no reason to be here anymore. This temple is kind of like not sacred anymore, I think is the way he sort of rationalizes it.
Is it also like Obi-Wan essentially yell at him that he can never return to this temple now?
Yeah, I think so. Something to that effect, yeah. But then like the rest of the rebels get there, and Darth Vader. The rebels like surround Vader. They're like, "You're surrounded," and I did quote it in my notes here because it's such a great line. Vader goes, "All I am surrounded by is fear and dead men," and
proceeds to blow them all up.
Yep, with their own grenades. It's so good. It's awesome. Han and Leia are here as well. They find out that Luke is there. We get a great. Then we start like having like some of these like core casts of characters between like the Jason Aaron Star Wars run and the Kieran Gillen Vader run sort of like start to interact together, and so that's really fun. Like we get a great interaction between like Afra and Han early on. Afra doesn't know who Han is, but Han has definitely heard of Afra, but I really love the just like, I don't know, putting their reputations up against each other. It's cool.
I love the way 000 tricks Luke initially.
Oh, as disguised as 3PO. Yeah, I love that. I think that's really fun. But I mean, hey, I guess it's easy to do, you know. But Luke does get captured. Luke gets captured a couple times throughout this comic. He kind of gets his ass handed to him.
He does. Which it shows that he might have the arrogance and the radicalization of someone who's willing to kill Darth Vader, but not the skill.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it makes me wonder because I think this Star Wars run by Jason Aaron. I mean, it's not all by Jason Aaron, but I think the run as a whole is like 75 issues long. It's a long time, and also I think there are like 3 years to chart between New Hope and Empire. So like, I'll be really curious to see when we continue this comic eventually. That I'll be curious to see like how we choose to actually handle Luke's training without full on making him meet Yoda early, you know. I'll be curious to see how like this book kind of handles that. That could be interesting, but
will be.
Yeah. We do get some great droid interactions as well. We have BT1 versus R2. Look, as much as I love R2, I kind of knew right from the get that BT was going to kick his ass. So there's that.
Man, BT1 can literally fabricate his own weapons inside him.
Yeah. And he pulls the wall. I love like just showing the sheer size of BT's weaponry like next to R2 and like R2 running away like a bitch. I mean, I don't really blame him, I guess.
Listen, R2 has all the confidence of BT1. He has just like a stun gun.
Mm-hmm. R2 may have been able to kill R3 in Clone Wars, but R3 had nothing on BT.
Right.
Yeah. We do also get, speaking of great droid interactions, although not strictly droid, in the middle of our like Han and Afra interaction as they're surrounded by the droids. Chewie fucking rips off one of his 000's arms. I think that's fun.
His arms off, Chewie.
Rip his arms off, and he gets an arm. But then Luke, not long after, gets 000's other arm, and then stabs him.
Did 000 have a line like, "What is with you guys in arms today?"
You know what? I read this before the Bad Batch season 3 ended. I did not realize how relevant the conversation of chopping off hands and arms would be. But it's Star Wars, so I guess I shouldn't be too surprised. But then, let's see. Oh yeah, the whole wasp worm bit. I have that in my notes here. That's really fun.
Yeah,
Han and Afra just sicking wasp worms on each other. I don't know. That was a great
because
time.
it's Harrison Ford versus Harrison Ford.
Yeah. Which actually, yeah, I love the fact we said like way back in our first Darth Vader coverage that like Afra is Space Indiana Jones. Well, that's literally the dynamic here. It's Han versus Indy and Harrison Ford versus Harrison Ford. It's great. Let's see. I have it in my notes here. I forget what the actual line is, but there's a whole thing where like I think it was after the wasp worm bit where like they think that Afra is dead or something, and the 000 is like, oh well, that sucks. I kind of wanted to kill her myself. I don't know. I just kind of love that. I just love how psychotic BT and 000 are. Like they just wanted to kill Afra themselves. They were already like plotting to do this.
I know. I mean, would it really be out of this is totally within their protocol, literally.
Mm-hmm. But up until this point, I think like Leia really hadn't had much time to shine. But she has like a whole like her versus Vader cliffhanger all to herself. It's really, really cool. Seeing like Leia just like face to face with Vader, like she has found him. And also something that I like that Aaron and Gillen play with in this is that Leia has a specific vendetta against Vader because of Alderaan. And seeing her, just like so driven to take him down herself. It's really, really interesting. I like that. And also it showed that like Leia is willing to go so far to take him down that she's willing to sacrifice other rebels to do it.
It is an interesting effect of being a leader in the rebellion and having a say as to where your men will go.
Mm-hmm. Well, especially talking about, how morally gray the rebellion can be. I think we talked about this before personally, but one of my favorite like scenes from Rogue One is that great bit when Cassian Andor just kills that other rebel because he would be slowing him down if he kept going on the mission. And he's like, this mission is worth something. And Cassian's belief in the rebellion and their mission is so strong that he believes that this other rebel should be well aware of the consequences of stumbling and falling and in the middle of such an important mission, and that a rebellion has to be something that you're willing to die for. So seeing that sort of extended into this, extending that conversation into this, I should say, I think is really interesting. So
it absolutely is.
Yeah. Then on top of it all, Black Chrysanthemum gets involved. Black Chrysanthemum gets called in. He's a character that I always like. Han thinks that Chrysanthemum is like here for him, which is a fun little thing to throw in there because Han thinks everyone's out to get him.
It is funny. Also, the Falcon gets fucked up for a hot minute.
Oh yeah. Then oh god, I also have my notes here. The bit where 000 takes C-3PO's arms because he needs some new arms, and he's got 3POs now. It's great.
Don't have the electroshockers in them, but it's okay. That'll probably be rectified at some point.
Yeah. But then the rest of or I shouldn't say the rest of the Imperials, but a fleet of Imperials get brought here because who else is here but Commander Carbon? He's kind of a fun character. I'm just really glad he gets killed off in this.
Yeah, I was having enough of him at this point.
Yeah, he's not the most interesting person. But we do get some fun.
I understand he's set up to be like a temporary rival. I don't know. Yeah. I was really hoping he wouldn't be around a whole lot longer.
Yeah. But then we get some fun sort of like side-by-side fights. We have like Vader versus Carbon, and then one of my favorites is Chewie versus Chrysanthemum. I like seeing that. And also just that idea that that like through, of course, we have the main lineup of Star Wars characters in the main Star Wars title, but then in the Darth Vader title, we sort of have like parallels for most, if not all of them. We have Afra for Han, we have Chrysanthemum for Chewie, we have 000 and BT for 3PO and R2. I don't think there's anyone for Leia.
No, because Leia's kind of is supposed to be, I believe, her role is like having them is that vendetta for Vader, and having the chance to take the shot, and maybe even hitting him because he's so taking the shot at Vader, and maybe even hitting him because he's so distracted.
Mm-hmm. I forget, why is Vader distracted? Because I put that in my notes here. I was like, why is Vader distracted? But I can't.
He's so enthralled in his battle, like it's actually taking up all his energy.
Gotcha. Anyway, sorry, go on.
I was just gonna say, and Leia gets called away because like there's literally just more important matters, her friends and family and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Oh man, then BT1 murders some fucking stormtroopers. That's great. And then Luke in the middle of all this is contacting Obi-Wan. And then Vader also hears Obi-Wan, which I found to be a really interesting moment.
Yeah.
Because actually, I guess I'm just thinking about this now. Really, that like there's that line in New Hope. Strike me down, I'll become more powerful than you can possibly imagine. Yada yada yada. But Vader never really sees the consequences of that.
No, I guess he doesn't, does he?
So like actually kind of having that moment here where he's like, oh shit, is Obi-Wan still around somehow? What? I think that's really interesting. Yeah, cool. Anyway, Chrysanthemum beats Chewie, which I'm a little sad about, but I guess it makes sense. So then Chrysanthemum starts taking on Han. Luke gets captured by some stormtroopers because again, Luke is just constantly getting captured in this. Then let's see.
I thought Leia was the damsel in distress,
right? Look, Luke has always been the damsel of this group.
That's totally fair.
Oh man, good stuff. But then hang on, I'm thinking. Okay, I had to look in the comic because I could not remember what my note was referring to here. 3PO is the one that takes down Chrysanthemum because 3PO has his arms taken off and he's like short circuiting, and so Chrysanthemum he hits 3PO by accident, and both of them get shocked and go down at the same time.
Yeah, that looks right. Yep.
Fun moment. Really, really fun moment. Let's see. Afra. Oh, that's right. Afra crashes her ship into Carbon then, and Vader kills him off then. Great moment. Finally, glad this fucker is finally out of here. Vader brings down the shuttle, fucking Force Unleashed style, which is awesome. And Leia knocks out Afra. Afra is captured by the rebels, and the rebels escape. Because of course they do.
I'm very curious to see how that will play out.
Yeah.
But we're not going to be dealing with that.
I forget exactly how long after this the Afra solo series started up. I want to say it was only after the main Vader, the first main Vader title had ended, though. I think.
That would make sense because Vader's next objective would be to.
Well, I think it's
closest ally.
Yeah, I think Vader's gonna be going after Afra next. So I think after that, I think the fallout of that would be wherever Afra's solo series comes in, because I think that's also kickstarted by a crossover event with the main Star Wars title as well.
Of course it is. Why wouldn't it be?
Yeah. Gotta love Star Wars comics. I think there's a little ad for it here though too. No, not in this volume. It's gotta be in one of the other volumes because they haven't reprinted Vader Down since its first or second printing. These rat bastards. Which I don't know why. It's probably the best comic we've read so far for this show. So
it is. I mean, it's probably built on the fact that we've had a lot of fun with the comics going.
Yeah, and this is the most fun I've had with them so far. So yeah, it's a great time. It's a really great time. For those wondering how we'll be continuing going forward, we're gonna do some other things in between. We have a different comic to cover next time, and obviously the time after that because High Republic stuff. But I think I'm not sure exactly when we'll get back to both of these. I think when we do get back to these, I think I want to finish off Vader first, because We only have like 2 volumes left of Vader after this, at least of the first run, before they switch back to like post Revenge of the Sith stuff, which apparently is really where the Darth Vader comic gets amazing, is with the Charles Soule run, which I guess makes sense because it's Charles Soule, and I think it's also where like a lot of the iconic Vader comic moments come from. So
yeah.
Anyway, shall we? Let's book it. Let's get into a book.
Let's talk about a book. Yeah.
So we've got Dark Force Rising here by Timothy Zahn, the second of the Thrawn trilogy.
I want to start off by saying Timothy Zahn makes a lot of assumptions because there's no source material to go off of.
I'll say, like, so this is your second foray into Legends material.
Like Legends material as well.
Mm-hmm. The time between Heir to the Empire and Dark Force Rising was not long, but long enough to know that Heir to the Empire was a massive fucking hit. And so Timothy Zahn was kind of handed the reins of Star Wars canon for some reason. And yeah, he's able to make a lot more assumptions about Star Wars things before George Lucas ever made the prequels. And I think anyone just hearing that could know that's a recipe for disaster. But I mean, hey, doing what he could, Zahn, handles it in like the best way he could imagine. I forget exactly like how they reconcile this eventually in Legends, like when the prequels do come out, because I know they do eventually, because even after the prequels, like all these things were still canon somehow.
I'd love to know how. Trust me.
But also, Zahn had a fascination with the Clone War in particular, which he has some very interesting ideas about.
He does.
But yeah, let's get into it.
Yeah,
So
talk about it.
First off, I normally, because I write down like 2 sort of sets of notes when we cover books. I have like a page for like characters and a couple pages then for like plot details. I could not fit all the characters on one page this time, so I had to like start stretching out the page. There's just a lot of characters in this book.
There are a
lot of named important characters in this one, even more than Heir to the Empire, I think. But yeah, let's talk about. I think I want to talk about Thrawn first, actually, because despite being the second of the Thrawn trilogy, Thrawn does kind of take a bit of a backseat in this one.
Yeah, he's in less of the total book. That I noticed that as well.
Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, he's still a great character, still an interesting character. And I think
that's why I said less of the total book.
Mm-hmm. I do think some of his best scenes are actually when he's interacting with other characters in this. Like, there's that great scene when he goes and like talks with the Nogri then when he visits them while Leia's still there, and it's like that's one of my favorite Thrawn scenes in the whole book. But like most of the time, he's just kind of up in his ship talking with Pelion and Sabaoth for a long periods of time. He's not even talking with Sabaoth most of the time. It's just Pelion, really.
Yeah. Usually it's how something other. Usually it's about how things aren't going exactly as planned.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, most of the time he starts the book like going after like Talon Card, because he has very much put together that Talon Card is not looking out for Thrawn's best interests. Also, we get another Rishi mention, which I think we also had last time in Heir to the Empire as well, which I think I pointed out because larger Star Wars canon things. And also something that I hadn't realized when we read the last book was that where they found Drew Sabaoth last book, where he's staying still, is Tantus.
That's true.
It's the big ass mountain. It's Tantus. Yeah, they call it Tantus. That is exactly what they're using in the Bad Batch.
Lore just finds its way back in.
Yeah. Legends all the way, I guess. Speaking of, actually, we'll have some things to talk about next time.
I just want to say though too, it even has a similar purpose.
Yeah, actually. Yeah. It's always been like a place for like force sensitive going ons. Yeah. Yeah, it's cool. I really like that.
That's weird.
Yeah, isn't it?
I didn't ever really put that together, huh?
Yeah. And then we'll be talking about more of this shit next time too with Tales of the Empire. Bring back like lore things into current canon, Legends things into current canons. So that's cool. Anyway, one of my favorite things about this book actually is that we have Luke and Lando early on get a really great sort of dynamic together. And I don't know, man. I I had my friend Jacob Licklider read this book a while back, and he said it was also one of his favorite things about this book. And also, he just kind of lamented that like Mark Hamill and Billy D. Williams just never got the chance to interact more as Luke and Lando within the movies, because like they have such a great dynamic as characters. Like, and Hamill and Williams would play well off each other. Like, I don't know, they just have a really great dynamic. I love reading them together.
I did like seeing them together, like in this context. They were phenomenal, and of course, Lando and Han had also really good scenes in book 2, of course. But we've seen those scenes more often, though.
Yeah, like we know, like Zahn is working off the established relationship between Han and Lando and like Empire and Return of the Jedi, but like here it's he's crafting this sort of like whole new relationship between Luke and Lando, and it really works.
I think it helps too, especially in this book, and in Heir, I suppose as well. Luke is more of an unsure character because this is new ground being trodden upon. We're creating a general mythos that you could still take parts of it as true, that people would look to like the Jedi for specific maybe arbitrations, or like a Jedi would maybe have some more sway in a conversation and whatnot. Like, you could still really take those things as true even today in canon. And seeing Luke attempt to figure that out, and like occasionally even look back at Lando and go, is this going all right? Like, is this looking good to you?
Yeah, it's cool. It's really cool to see. Yeah, love them. We also do focus a bit more on sort of Admiral Akbar being under fire here by the New Republic here, which I love seeing. And also just really sad to see, because again, it's Admiral Akbar. We all love Admiral
Akbar.
Yeah, you can't be mad at him.
At least this book clears up a lot of like who did what questions.
Yeah, well, especially because then we start getting into like Han being questioned by Phalia and Mon Mothma. You had an interesting point actually, because we were talking about this book a bit, but before recording this and all that. But you had an interesting point about Mon Mothma and some of Zahn's assumptions about Mon Mothma as a character.
Oh God, yeah. What's the senator's name?
Phalia?
Not Phalia. Later in the book, the Corellian senator.
Trying to check my notes here. Braelia? Or no? No, sorry. Iblis. Bill Iblis.
Oh, yes. He says Han, if I remember correctly. I mean, I mentioned it then too, of course, but I would like about Mon Mothma's characterization in general. Like, towards the end of the book, he's like, Mon Mothma was like, any day now, gonna just take out the Emperor and to take control of the Empire. And I'm like, can I see that reality?
I believe she fucking could, because she's Mon fucking Mothma. Ageless queen that she is.
Somehow, Mon Mothma returned.
Yes, that's the real Rise of Skywalker.
But I want to honestly see a world in Legends. Obviously, I want to see a book or something. There might be one that exists. I mean, it would have to. It's not going to exist now, obviously. Of power-hungry Mon Mothma into the Senate, like just any day now, going to take command from the Emperor.
Yeah, I kind of love that. I love that idea. It'd be funny.
It shows too that she. Not saying it's like a right characterization, but it does kind of show in these books that that's not necessarily wrong. It just shows that a characterization seems to be a little holding true, at least within Zahn's books at the moment.
I mean, something like that could honestly still be true. Like Mon Mothma, like sort of plotting in the background, not necessarily to take over the Empire, but to more sort of use that power to make the New Republic. Sort of. I don't know. I kind of love that. Cool idea.
It's an interesting idea that could still theoretically work, just not as directly as Zahn has made it seem,
and not as aggressive. Yeah. We get a great scene actually early on here where Luke is doing some reading on Druis, and he finds some interesting things. he finds out first off he sees we get some comments on the imperial dating system here, which again before we had BBY and ABY we had I guess that when the Empire took over as the government, they just started making their own dates. Like they started from year 0 and worked from there.
It was like what was it pre-imperial, not even post-imperial, I suppose. I don't remember what the exact what it was referenced as off the top of my head.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think it's just an interesting point. Also, in his reading, he finds out that apparently at some point Yoda was found on Dagobah by the Empire. Like, what?
Again, Zahn makes some very interesting choices. I
want to see that. I want to see that made canon again somehow. But give me, I don't know, an Inquisitor finding Yoda on Dagobah, and Yoda kills the guy before he can get back to the Empire.
Zahn makes a very interesting decision because he's been given the hands of lore. He's been given the reins of lore for some ungodly reason.
This is why fans should not be allowed to make Star Wars.
He decided, now, mind you, in a prequel world, how would you assume a Jedi would be taught? And I was like, and I'm reading like, oh, Zahn clearly thought it would be in a record traceable schooling. And I'm like, okay, I can see how you get there. And logically, that kind of makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds so weird in a post-prequel world.
Mm-hmm.
No?
Yeah, oh, totally. We then start to learn about what the title refers to. They were talking about the Dark Force Fleet. We get actually some of Talon Karrde's backstory here, which I find interesting because I just know he was like involved in that at all. Is interesting. But yeah, we have the Dark Force Fleet. This fleet of dreadnoughts that Thrawn is trying to find and raise. Actually, it kind of like for me at least, rereading this evoked imagery of Rise of Skywalker as well, of Palpatine bringing back the Final Order, which I thought was interesting. I don't know if that's like at all what Rise of Skywalker was going for. I doubt it.
I doubt it. Yeah.
But I mean, hey, similar idea. We then have you know what? Okay, weird moment for me. So we catch up with Mara Jade a little bit, and she faces off against Dengar. Dengar, the Dengar, toilet paper head man himself. And also apparently his last name is Roth. Is that a thing? Is that still canon? Is he Dengar Roth? I don't know. She finds his card or something and finds out some more about him and I don't know. I guess he has a last name. I don't know. He's always just kind of been Dengar to me.
I know. It's weird. It could be canon. The last name doesn't matter. Are we really going to be riots in the street if it's canon or not?
I will. We get a great moment actually then when so Leia is going to meet with the Nogri then, and she's bringing 3PO and Chewie with her. But there's this great moment when she's passing over Endor and sort of feeling out I don't know. There's this sort of force sensitive moment with her when she's like passing over Endor and like feeling sort of the events of Return of the Jedi there. I don't know. I found that one of the more
I
moments
think
with her.
it was explained, and I really loved the explanation, regardless of how much sense it makes or doesn't make. That effects of what happened with the Death Star are so prevalent it left like a shadow in the Force.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. That's if nothing else, it's poetic as hell.
Yeah, it's really, really good. Then we have some more Akbar political dealings. Han faces off with Bralia. That's who I'm thinking of. That's the other Bothan here.
Yes.
Notice they call out of I forget, was the Lady Luck called out in the last book in Heir to the Empire as Lando's ship, or was that new to this? I forget. I felt like commenting on it. I forgot if it was actually in the last book or not.
I don't remember for sure, but either way, I like the name.
Yeah,
it's good.
Yeah. But then Leia and Chewie meet with Kabarak, who's our main sort of like Nogri that we're dealing with here. I found, because there's a lot of time in this book dedicated to the Nogri and their sort of their whole deal with the Empire. I find that really, really interesting because these are people that feel that they are completely indebted to the Empire, and that like people are literally raised in the Nogri with the express purpose of like being given to the Empire to work for the Empire someday. I just think
sort of like a death squad almost, like shadow troopers, like them you would never see them coming style.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, and we see that with Rook, you know, who's one of like Thrawn's main people, and it's just like I really love that. I love that idea. Yeah, just a really great moment. Also, I forget which one says it. I want to say it was Kabarak that says it, but they say that Leia, as a great extension of the Lady Vader moment from last book, Leia is carrying the heirs of Vader. They say, which, my God, that's so good. Yeah, love that.
Those times where you go, it's wrong, but it isn't.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. Then we get into the Bell Iblis stuff. We get like some Bell like talks about like Kid Han. We get some information on like little Han shenanigans, which I kind of love. I love that little scene.
I kind of love it in the same way Mon Mothma being power hungry and like any day now like just gonna assassinate the Emperor.
Yeah.
Funny to picture.
Yeah.
Han Solo being like involved in politics as a kid is just like, this sounds almost stupid, but I love it.
Mm-hmm. There's also the idea that I think would this be like the earliest mention of Han ever being kicked out of the Imperial Academy?
I think. I want to say so. I can't. I mean, how much material was published between airing this that would have mentioned it?
Not much at all. Although I'm not sure like how. I'm not sure how much we would have known from like other like sort of like supplemental stuff from like the time when the trilogy was releasing. Not sure.
I mean, hey, maybe it was like super public knowledge, and this is just like sort of Zahn like going, yeah, this happened too, and everyone going, yep, I knew that.
Yeah. But then back on the Nogri then for a bit, because I don't know, I really loved this. Because I mentioned it earlier, that when Thrawn goes to visit the Nogri, Leia sort of like is like hiding there, and she sees Thrawn for the first time. I found that a really interesting moment. Then we get
person who hasn't seen Thrawn in person is Luke now.
I think so.
Oh no, he would have seen him at the battle, right?
Probably. I think. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. So yeah. But then let's see, and then we gotta talk about the whole Luke and Sabaoth side of this book, because that's where shit really starts to ramp up. So Sabaoth needs Luke for something. Luke eventually meets with him.
He wants to make him like a Jedi slave apprentice, I think is his plan.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I remember a lot more about Last Command than I remember. I think about the rest of this trilogy, to be honest. We'll talk about that when we do eventually read Last Command. Yeah, we'll see. So we talked with like Sabaoth about like his outbound flight and his supposed death. I did remember actually, what was weird rereading this was I remembered when I was reading that they called it the Outbound Flight. I was like, wait a second, isn't there a book called Outbound Flight? I never read it, but there is a book called Outbound Flight. It is literally about that exact event, and it is the death of the original Joruus Sabaoth. And yeah,
fun.
I really want to check that one out someday. Might be fun to do on the show. So, let's see. Trying to just cover my Luke notes here now. Where are they? Yep, literally can't find them. Where are they now? Jesus. Oh yeah, so we get some like training between Luke and Joruus Sabaoth. And like I love like I don't know. Luke is far too forgiving, I think at least, of Sabaoth's methods, because like Sabaoth starts like ranting about like Jedi superiority to everyone else,
right? And Luke just sits there like,
Your dictator is very dictator. Yeah,
Luke does give a little bit pushback, but he's like, yeah, but the galaxy's like different now, and Sabaoth goes, no.
We are better. We are. I don't think he ever says superior race, but he pretty much says superior race. Yeah, it's dangerous. It really is. But then Mara gets involved in it all, and we put Luke and Mara face to face again. And Card is thrown into it all, and I really love the dynamic then between like Luke, Mara, and Talon Card, like sort of having to all work together in this moment.
I did want to say before the Luke and Mara rescue Talon Card from the Empire,
mm-hmm.
the Imperial Remnant, whatever they're going by. They know both are canon and non-canon at the same time. Like Imperial Remnant is still a thing in canon.
Mm-hmm.
I love the way that Mara essentially is like frees Luke by taking one of those force-sucking animals.
Oh yeah, I forget what they're called. I don't have them written in my notes on this one.
Begins with a Y. I don't remember it off the top of my head.
I'll look it up while you're saying this. Go ahead.
Like by taking like one or two of them with her and basically puts Luke in the bubble, and he suddenly feels like more awake. He's more energized. Kasabayoth has been like, I don't know, draining his energy to make him more just agreeable, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Because every time Luke would get a bit uppity, Sabayoth would suddenly be like, Luke, why don't you go lay down? Get some sleep.
I can't find it in my notes here. It's Salamari. Salamari? Yeah, I think that's how it's pronounced. Yeah, that's what it is. Anyway, I was looking for the name of the creatures.
Yeah, but she breaks Luke's training, if you will, reverse training, I guess. It's one of those, and then they go try to rescue Talon Card.
Yeah, it makes for a really fun dynamic, and Thrawn is sort of like following them. He's in the background the whole time, so that's fun. Getting back on though some of the more political side of this, we get some more like some more scenes about like how other people feel about like Mon Mothma. We talked about Bella already with that, but also I know you were really happy to see more about how Winter is involved in all this.
Hey, that was bothering me. I was like, it has to be. I was so happy to know that it was both people I suspected.
Love it.
No idea how happy I was. I was right twice on the same question.
Also, an interesting point here that Lando seems to know about the Dark Force as well, which is a cool Dark Force fleet.
It almost sounds like if you were to try to find like the Fountain of Youth in our world, you know, like everyone
people just kind of like generally know about it. Yeah, or at least have heard of it. Yeah,
I've heard of it. Like everyone, if you like ask any random person, say, like I said, about the Fountain of Youth, not really a comparable example, but it's the first one I could think of.
Mm-hmm.
And be like, do you know anything about that? And they go, yeah, it's got like this vague property. Obviously, Fountain of Youth is a little more specific than this fleet of ships.
Mm-hmm.
But everyone kind of knows about it, and it's like that's like that in Star Wars.
Yeah. Actually, I forgot to mention before saying that like Mara went to go with Luke and everyone. Mara had this great scene where she was like contacting Thrawn and like used her status as the Emperor's hand to like get in with him, and like Thrawn is like, okay, fine, I'll let you work with me, but then we have to talk about your time away from Imperial service, and I really love that. And like Card finds out about this, and like Mara has to like really reassure him that she's still loyal to him and all this,
mostly by rescuing him.
Yeah.
However, Thrawn in that conversation drops a bomb of like, oh yeah, you were like the best of them.
Mm-hmm.
And Mara goes like, I'm sorry, what?
Yeah. Ugh, so good. But then I have a note here that I'm really having a hard time deciphering what it means. I have something about Leia's dynamic with 3PO, and I have in parentheses test. Sorry, not test. I have TESB, The Empire Strikes Back. Okay, something about that. Is something mentioned there about her and 3PO?
Empire Strikes Back?
What would that have to do with it? Or I don't know.
That is an interesting note to decipher indeed.
I have no clue what that means.
When I know she like kind of pushes through those concerns about a droid acting weird by the end of the book.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's sad.
I don't think so.
I mean, that droid is a spy for Thrawn because he needs a way to keep an eye on how do you say it? The Nagari?
The Nogri?
The Nogri. He has like the spy droid watching the Nogri.
Mm-hmm.
And Ripio tries to warn Leia like 3 chapters before Leia goes, "Oh, wait a minute!"
yeah. It is also around here that we get like sort of Leia like more accepting her position as like Vader's daughter for the Nogri. I also get to see get to imagine Leia with a lightsaber, which is cool. Always like that.
I think we mentioned is he's trying to figure out how guilty the rebellion is for the situation the Nogri find themselves in.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I mean that's why like I find the dynamic between Leia and the Nogri so interesting, and I think that's why like Zahn dedicates so much time to it here. Is because like it's a really cool idea. Like, how has the rebellion affected people that were already under the thumb of the Empire, and that were actually in a way willingly loyal to them. It's a cool idea.
Really and cool again, idea. Zahn kind of makes an interesting assumption through this very interesting interaction of how long ago were the Clone Wars again? Like maybe 20 years ago. In real life, in current Star Wars,
in current canon, from the time that this would take place, 5 years after Return of the Jedi, that's 20. It's about 30 years, close to 30.
Zahn, if I remember correctly, has it at closer to 40, maybe almost 50, based off of how long the soil's been unusable.
Yeah,
and I'm like, that's an interesting assumption. I could get kind of here. But that's interesting in retrospect. And I'd love to see how that gets, retconned into making sense.
Mm-hmm. Can we talk about how funny Wedge is always used in these books? He's always like called it he's always called it at like the very end to get involved. She's like, "Yeah, man, I'm so ready. I'm here." He's like that guy that like he's like a guy that is just like always like on like always in the background, just like ready to like come in. And there's like, "Oh, actually, no, Wedge, we don't actually need you for anything. You can just you can go home. You're fine." He always gets called in at the very end of these books.
He's also always called in at like the perfect opportunity to be like stripped of all of his military power.
Maybe that's where Wedge's appearance in Rise of Skywalker really comes from, is just how weird he's portrayed in these books. Is that like it's just the guy that like comes in, kicks some ass, is all like happy to be there, and then just kind of disappears for long periods of time. It's great.
Can't wait to read Last Command, and then he's in like the last 10 chapters, and that's it.
He kills Thrawn.
He goes out crashing his ship into Thrawn's ship, and it explodes.
Oh, he goes out like that A-Wing pilot in Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
Oh my god. In the end, though, Thrawn does win the Katana fleet.
All of it or most of it? Didn't they get, like,
most of it, yeah. What's up?
Did they get like a couple ships at the end?
Yeah, he didn't get the entire thing, but like he's got enough to win. We get some interesting like musings at the end here as Luke and Han meet up again. It's like Luke like had to save Mara, and also big bomb at the end here. Thrawn has the ability to make clones. So that's pretty much where the book ends. It's a big thing. It's cool. It's awesome. I can't imagine like what reading this at the time would have been like. Like, ugh, it's crazy. Would love.
Yeah, I would love to know, because obviously we have very different views on clones and the Clone Wars and all this. Mm-hmm.
But these are just straight clones. Like, this is exactly like what the Clone War was imagined as. It was just clones of other people. Just a total like invasion of the body snatchers type thing. We're here to replace you. It's cool. It's really cool.
Thrawn, as the characters observe, doesn't need years and years to build up people to train them. Could strictly theoretically clone one guy that's already fully trained, and the clones should all theoretically just be equally as trained. And the Katana fleet banned in like maybe a few months.
Yeah. And so The Last Command is going to be a ride, but we'll get back to that eventually. But yeah, that was Dark Force Rising, and as such, that was today's episode of R2-BD. Thanks for watching, guys. It means a lot. I know the release schedule of this series has been kind of sporadic, but that was kind of the whole release schedule for this series from the get. Just kind of like
it was never like a set, like so many a month, so many a year. This was just
just kind of
more as things kind of finished up, especially as we do more current things.
Yeah, the only thing that the only reason we're having like a bit more of a schedule right now is because there are a lot of current things coming out that we want to talk about. So, speaking of, actually, next time, if you want to follow along, we're talking about Tales of the Empire, which I'm very excited to talk about. We're covering the comic Thrawn by Timothy Zahn, by Jody Houser, an adaptation of the book Thrawn by Timothy Zahn. It's weird to say, but yeah, we're talking about the comic Thrawn, the comic adaptation of Thrawn, and then we're talking about a book that you chose, Shadow of the Sith by Adam Christopher. That's the name. I have the book here with me.
If I followed the description of it as I think I have. I think we're going to get more Lando and Luke.
I mean, hey, just looking at the cover of it, I mean, I would imagine that's what it is.
So it's like, I'm curious to see what that particular dynamic looks like, because it's further along in the timeline now.
Yeah. So that'll be fun. I'm excited for it. So be sure to join us for that next time, guys. But in the meantime, if you haven't checked out past R2-BD episodes, please do that. If you also happen to be a Star Trek fan watching this, we do regular Star Trek videos that you can check out. We just recently finished the original series. We're talking about the animated series now, so you can check all that out. Otherwise, our socials and everything will be linked in the description below. And you can check all those out if you're interested in following us there. And I think that about does it. So thanks so much for watching, guys. Until next time, this has been Joey Morgan.
Jacob.
Goodbye.